Are you longing to encounter God in that deep, rich way we often experience Him when we go away for a retreat? Maybe for one reason or another, you can't get away right now. Possibly because we are experiencing a pandemic. Perhaps you're torn, you got other limitations to deal with, or time consuming responsibilities to fulfill. But you also long to spend extended time with God, exploring and deepening your relationship with Him. In today's podcast, we will explore how to make it possible to have your own stay-at-home retreat. Welcome to Activating the Creative in You, where we gather with everyday people who are making a difference. Thank you for joining in on Activation Talks, where we share with you encouraging and thought-provoking discussions that are meant to activate you to move into God's purpose for your life. Our guest speaker has traveled globally and has taught and worked with diverse people groups. She brings to our discussion both creative and insightful perspectives and observations. Today, she will be sharing with us some incredible words of wisdom. My name is Nancy Barrios, and I am your host. Good morning, Kathryn.
Good morning, Nancy. How are you doing?
I'm doing great. I am so happy today because it's one of those rare days when the sun is shining and it's the Midwest. We're in the middle of winter, and I think we have more grays than we have sunny days.
Yeah, I think you're right. I wish you could send some of that over here by me.
Well, you're not too far away. Where are you at, Kathryn?
Fort Wayne, Indiana.
That's probably about 3 to 4 hours away from where I'm at.
That's right. That's right. Yeah.
And folks, I'm not in Finland right now. I'm actually sitting in my home, and behind me is my virtual space. And I thought that because of today and what we're going to be sharing, it would be awesome to kind of get into that place where we're part of nature. So that's why I have my wonderful forest behind me.
All you need is a little snow. That would make it a little more realistic. But I love the green and I love the flourishing. So, yeah, it does. It sets the tone for what we'll be talking about today.
One of the most important things that we are probably needing right now is soul care.
Mm.
But before we begin, I always invite my guests to share a little bit about themselves. So this is your chance to share some background information. This is it could be the more serious things, or also some more lighthearted things that are more fun that you might want your audience to kind of know about who you are.
Well, on the back of my book, I said I'm a mom, a grandma. I ask my grandkids to call me Grammy. I've got 9 grandkids. I'm a sojourner. I think that's one of the titles that kind of really fits me because we've done a lot of traveling in the last 15 years or so. My husband, Nick, and I were living in Asia for quite a bit of that time. So, and I enjoy being with people and listening to people. When we were in Asia, I had a role that was called member care, which was basically helping other people who were working cross-culturally to maintain their emotional and spiritual health. So that's kind of the background that I bring to today's discussion.
That's excellent because you are the perfect person to share the information that you are going to give on the podcast. And it's all in regards to your first book.
That's right. My first book. It's called Parables of the Eucalyptus. And one of the things that I really enjoy is, I mean, I enjoy nature. Like I love the setting that you've placed yourself in today, Nancy. And I find that nature has a lot of lessons to teach us. And, you know, most of Jesus's teachings were parables. It was his favorite way to communicate important truths. And I find that nature continues to have lessons to teach us and stories to tell us and insights to give us. And so it happened that I was curious about the eucalyptus and started looking at some of its characteristics and really felt like there were a lot of rich characteristics, a lot of rich points to what the eucalyptus is and how it grows and so on. And I ended up turning that into an entire retreat guide of like pondering those characteristics and applying those things into our lives and using them as a jumping point for connecting with Father.
I know that with this particular book, there are different approaches that are not usual for writing styles that are incorporated more, I would say, in this part of the world. And I did start to read the book, and we are actually going to be hosting our own small group with a few women who are wanting to dive in and get the information from this source. And as I was looking through the book, I saw that there were some excellent activities that are different from the usual. And I thought that made it special. Will you share a little bit more on that?
Yeah. I mean, what sets us aside or sets us apart from every other religion in the world, if we're Jesus followers? And it's our relationship with God. It's the fact that Jesus has opened the way for us to have a connection, an ongoing day by day relationship with God, a partnership with God, even collaboration with Him. And I think sometimes, especially in the West, we have a tendency to like just keep on taking in information and absorbing truth, which truth is a good thing. We want to be absorbing that. We want to be putting that into our lives, but we don't always interact with Father about it. We don't always take the time to let it sink in or see how we can apply it or see how it has been, a certain truth has been at work in our lives. And so I tried to give opportunities for people to interact with the information in ways that allowed them to connect with Father and to connect with truth and to give time and space and a framework for listening and strengthening our relationship with the Lord.
Can you give us some examples of how you approach this particular idea of interacting with the material and interacting with Father?
Well, one of the sections of the book talks about a certain characteristic of the eucalyptus trees that has to do with its resilience in the face of fire. Eucalyptus have a lot of oils in them, like eucalyptus essential oils are used throughout the world for many different purposes. But the fact that there are so many oils in the tree makes it that the tree catches on fire really easily. And God has made those eucalyptus trees with various characteristics that help them deal with fire. One of them is that it has really thick bark that can often resist the forest fires. And the other thing is it has a certain kind of bud that releases seed after there's been a fire. So even if the tree has been destroyed, it releases these epicormic buds. And so one section of the retreat, I talk about the bark and the seeds, the way Father has been with us in the fires and the ways He's protected us and the seeds that have been released in our lives as we've walked through the fire. And one of the activities that we do is to go outside and take photos of bark and seeds and just take that as an opportunity to think some more about the bark and the seeds in our lives. And then we put it together in a little photo montage. And I give a link for places where you can, put together that kind of photo montage and link it with a verse that had been chosen by the person doing the retreat as a way of creating something to solidify what Father's been saying. Because I think creativity is such an important aspect of our relationship with the Lord. It's like it's in the essence of his character, right? And it's one of the ways that he expresses his character through us. And it's one of the ways that we can connect with him deeply. So my heart is that as people participate in this retreat, use these materials, that it would give an opportunity to form deep connection.
I think it's wonderful how you are being so innovative with the approach in regards to how you put this material together. It made me think about the left brain and right brain and how each side of the brain has a role. The left brain works with analysis, logic, facts, sequencing, mathematics, and language. The right brain works with creativity, intuition, feelings, imagination, daydreaming, and arts. This book combines both sides. It's perfect. It doesn't just leave you on the left side just thinking and processing. It invites you to actually get out of the box and go in a different direction. And it's the thing that we lose as we become adults. We tend to go more on the left side of life, and opportunities to daydream, imagine, and be creative with art and just being out of the box it's not something that most of us will find time to do or be part of. It almost is something that gets lost, and yet you're bringing us back to that place, which is wonderful because we're holistic. We can't just be on one side.
Absolutely.
We have to be on both sides, and that balance is what we often are needing, which is why we sometimes can succumb into a state of mind where we're not feeling fully well. There's a depression or anxiety, and sometimes it's the idea of self-care. It could be is connected with the fact that we have left something that is necessary for our fullness be addressed.
You're absolutely right, Nancy. I mean, my background in member care, I could give you a number of citations for how important doing creative things is for the care of our soul. That's a very restorative thing. So it's not only a holistic thing and a healthy thing for us in any time, but especially in a season like this one where we're dealing with COVID. We need to be taking care of our whole being and addressing, like you said, both sides of the brain. And certainly we want to relate to God with both sides of our brain, right? So I think it's just including the creative things is a really important facet of connecting with God and coming into a place of more health internally. Yeah.
The Bible talks about how the message of the gospel must be simple enough so that a child can engage and understand. And it's the simple things that help us understand who God is. And I believe that part of that is being able to engage with the creative side of who we are.
Yeah, I agree. I agree completely. It's an important facet of really our identity and our identity in the Lord. He's creative and he's made us in his image. So we're creative people. And if we ignore that facet of our being, where does that leave us? I mean, we're kind of not fully ourselves, not fully the people that Father made us to be.
The timing on the writing of this book is perfect for the season. We're all dealing with the pandemic. Many of us were hoping that it would be over in a year, but we're going on to year number 2. And with that comes the crisis of mental health.
Mm-hmm.
There's a lot of that going on right now. The numbers are high. People are going into distress. The need for soul care is huge. And the Lord has really, really called you for such a time as this to give you this idea that we can still find a place where we can find healing and care for our souls.
Mm-hmm.
I love the fact that this is an invitation that does not have to be one that keeps us in isolation. Can you share more on how this book can be a tool and a support during a time like this?
Yeah. I wrote this to try to make it so that whatever our situation and whatever our circumstances, we could utilize it to connect with Father. So it can be utilized by somebody who is by themselves and wants to take a personal retreat on their own time in their own way. But it can also be used by a group of people like the one that you're organizing, Nancy. I happened to do like a test group with this book last year with some friends of mine who are scattered all over the world, and we joined together on Zoom and worked through this material. And it was such a great way for us to not only connect with Father and allow for restoration of our souls, but also to connect with one another and understand how the difficulties of this season are impacting all of us in various places in the world, and offer that mutual support and encouragement and understanding. So this retreat guide is set up so that it can be done either individually or with a group. And certainly with a group, there are always opportunities to be healing instruments for one another, and to be a source of encouragement for one another. So even if it's just with one other person, like I could see doing this retreat with a dear friend who is perhaps in another state, who you want to spend time with, but you can't because of COVID restrictions. And you could set time every few days to meet together and go through the materials of the retreat together, and connect with one another, support one another, encourage one another, and also build your own relationship with God and the health of your own soul.
Your key points regarding the writing of this material are all about the power of creativity and how it's important to find refreshment and restoration for our souls so that we can be expressive with creativity.
Mm.
And the other thing that you are also bringing to our attention is the fact that our relationship with God is not a set of religious rules or beliefs. It's actually the cultivation of a relationship with Him, not just to gain more head knowledge, but to gather all the necessary wisdom that we need so that we can grow in our Christian faith and mature in what God is calling us to be part of.
We're in a season when we need to connect with God, connect with one another, and connect with our own creativity. Those are all essential components for the healing of our souls in the face of this pandemic season. I think Parables of the Eucalyptus provides opportunity for all three of those healing components.
That is your takeaway point, right?
Yeah, I think so. Yeah, it's interesting. I started writing this retreat guide before COVID ever started. And it was written to be I originally did it as an on-the-go retreat guide, something that we could do when we can't get away, but we want to have some way to connect with Father. But as this season of pandemic has continued to impact our lives, it became so obvious to me that this is the time. This is the time for us to be able to have material like this book as a way to deal with the realities of the pandemic we're facing.
God is always ahead of us.
It's so true. So
He-
true.
He is able to guide us so we can become part of the process of bringing forth what is needed for the season that we're in.
Yeah. Yeah, I think so.
What are your next steps for the work that you are doing? And what would you hope to be doing 5 years from now?
In some ways, it's hard to answer that question because the last year and a half or so have held a lot of surprises for me and my husband, not just dealing with the pandemic, but also in our own careers. And we've just recently joined an organization called United Adoration, which is a movement for encouraging worship and encouraging artists and musicians to create their works of art to honor Father. And so I would hope that in the coming 5 years that we would be developing relationships throughout the world. United Adoration has a presence on multiple continents, and so that we have opportunities to develop relationships in various parts of the world and really encourage people in their artistic expressions of worship. And on a personal level, I have a book that I've been working on for a long time, and I'd like to see that book finished and published by a regular publishing house sometime in the next 5 years. So even though it's hard for me to look ahead and try to think of goals when all of my goals have been kind of blown out of the water in the last number of months, those are a couple of things that I'm hoping will be in my future.
I do hope that what you have envisioned will come to fruition.
Thanks, Nancy. I appreciate that.
You started the journey. The first step was to get the first idea out there. And it's a beautiful idea. And if it's in your heart, you're already dreaming. So it's most likely that God is marinating that for you. If we were wanting to get in contact with you, where can we find you, Kathryn?
You can find me on Facebook, Kathryn Kircher. I also have a Facebook page for this book, Parables of the Eucalyptus. So if you search Parables of the Eucalyptus, you can also find that on Facebook. And you can reach me at KathrynM.Kircher@gmail.com. And you can buy my book on Amazon in either Kindle or paperback formats.
We appreciate and thank you that you were able to join us. We hope that all who have been watching and listening have been both encouraged and empowered. Don't forget to subscribe to our channel and join us for Activation Talks again soon.